address to the Federal Assembly is, first of all, an attempt to look into the future. And today we are not going to speak about our short-term plans only, but about strategic objectives as well, about the matters that we believe are important for the confident long-term development of the country. And this kind of program, this kind of concrete measures has been developed during my trips to the regions, my conversations with the workers, engineers of the civilian and military factories, with the doctors, with the teachers, with the scientists, with volunteers, with entrepreneurs, with the families, with our frontline heroes, with the volunteer fighters, with the officers of the Russian armed forces. We understand that one has to prepare for such events, but still we hear about real problems of the people.
So guys, welcome to another Saturday stream. Good opening words from the guy that you see. The three of us were sitting on the front row watching, and all in our suits. So welcome,
you joke,
everybody.
Kevin, but actually I was at the Russophile conference this week, and there was a rumor he was going to appear. He did not, but I was in a suit and I was ready, and I was on the fourth row once.
Well, we have RT going to be down here in about a week, and there's rumors that he and Lavrov will be in the area at the time, but I don't know if that will happen either. So everybody, welcome again. And tonight we have Joseph Rose, the expat American from Moscow, and Serge Lubomudrov, a former Soviet citizen who now lives in Chicago. Both of these guys are good friends of mine, and most of you are familiar with Joseph and his channel. We are streaming out to his channel tonight as well. And Serge is my co-host on the Life in the Soviet Union stream. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Kevin. It's great to be here.
Thank you.
This should be interesting.
Yeah. So I'm going to let you guys do a lot of the talking tonight because I've lost my voice, got it back in time for this stream. And so with that, President Putin addressed the Russian Federal Assembly, which is basically the Russian version of, the U.S. Congress on February 29th of this year. And he detailed his plans for the future, development of the nation, his strategic goals for the future. And he reflected on the geopolitical situation around the world, but most of his time was talking about domestic issues, including 5 new national projects with several goals for 2030, tax reforms, and other initiatives. So, guys, any initial thoughts on his speech before I poke you on details?
Joseph, you go first.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, I mean, I heard it today while I was watching my kids play in the snow, and I was taking notes and, systematically going through the whole speech. And about halfway through, I was like thinking, my gosh, I love this whole thing. So full disclosure, I am a fan of the speech. I'm a fan of pretty much everything he had to say. And I feel bad to say it because I feel like I need to be equal. I need to be 50-50. I need to say good things, bad things. But I feel like it's kind of like, when you are going to go to a movie and everyone tells you it's wonderful, it almost never is because it changes your paradigm. And the reverse also happens. And so I spent 47 years in America, and the school system and DC and Hollywood told me Russia is the bad place, and then Putin is the bad guy. So now I get here, I've been here for 2 years, and it's absolutely not the case. So this is like a movie that I thought was going to be terrible, And in fact, it's not. Maybe it's only a good movie, but I've been told for so many years it's not a good movie. It's like, wow. It's like, the best chocolate ever. So that's my preface, just so you guys know, everyone who's listening going into this, where I stand.
And you, Serge?
I guess it's my turn. Yeah, I did listen to it twice, and unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to pay like 100% attention to it because I was distracted by work. And also, I don't think I've ever listened to Putin's address to the Federal Assembly in its entirety before. And frankly, I have kind of like a aversion to listen to speeches like this. I've never listened to or read full speeches of the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, which happened every 5 years, and I survived several of those. Nor do I listen to States of the Union every year in January here in the States. And I don't think even that happened this year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the current leader of the United States is incapable of doing that. But so anyhow, I did listen to that twice. And even though I live in another country, I still interested in what's going on in my motherland. It is interesting, definitely. It is optimistic. It does have maybe, I don't know, 2/3 of it was devoted to what's going to happen instead of what's happened before. Because again, like those speeches I've mentioned, given by general secretaries of the CPSU back then, it was like, oh, we have this, but we still have something there to fix. It wasn't like that, even though, of course, Putin mentioned some negative phenomena which still exist in Russia. But again, according to him, and I have no doubts, I have no reason to doubt his words, those negative phenomena are shrinking, diminishing, let's say. Like, for example, alcoholism or short compared to the Soviet time, short lifespan, average lifespan, which is increasing and still rising. So that was my reaction. And I didn't listen many analysis of his speech, and I actually didn't want to because I wanted to keep my my own impressions my own, so we're not affected by someone else. But that's what I wanted to say for now.
Well, Serge, there's two things I want to say based off of what you said. I completely agree with you because I made that note when I was listening that I don't think that there's that. Well, how should I say this to be polite? Not all world leaders could do what he did, which was talk for over 2 hours about very specific information, right? And so I'm from the United States. And, good or bad, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad, but what I would expect, what I'm used to if I were to hear a US president give a speech like this is 45, 50 minutes. And it's going to be kind of a sales pitch. It's not going to be that specific. And again, I'm not down on the US for this, but I was impressed how specific he could be. And again, I was told this is a bad movie, and I'm impressed that it's great. So when he was talking about, because you made note, there's a lot of talk about the future and about what they're going to do and like renovating schools and things like that. And I was thinking to myself as I was listening, I was like, yeah, that's right. That's right. And I had this feeling of he's definitely going to do that. Russia's definitely going to do that. And maybe I'm completely deluded and confused. But because I've been living here for 2 years and I vacationed here for the past decade, I see all this construction happening all the time. And I visit, for my YouTube channel, I visit other cities in Russia and they're nice. And I was surprised they were nice because I was also told only Moscow is nice. And that's just not the case. And I found myself thinking and making notes while I was listening. I was thinking, yeah, if you live in Russia right now, you're believing that they're going to do these things because you can see real things happening construction wise in front of your eyes right now. And as a father of 5 kids, 3 are adults, 2 are not, I'm kind of looking at it from both sides of a parent at the same time. And I'm happy to hear, schools are going to be renovated, for instance. So,
And my experience with what Vladimir Putin says from the time I've lived here has been that what he says he will do, he will do. And when he suggests to the Duma, and this is kind of where that negative connotation in the West comes of it being, a dictatorial, government. It is a bit authoritarian, but when he says, I would like the government to do this, that typically tends to be a directive. You will do this. And he does accomplish what he says he'll do. He talked about renovating cultural sites. And I know that Vorontsov Palace started to be renovated under federal funds about 3-4 months ago. So he does do these things on a regular basis and goes out and talks to the people, which is impressive to me. I find the government here is very accessible to the people.
Yeah, if this is so, and again, I have no reason to doubt that it is, because I don't live there after all. But it is definitely a very good development in the country which is rather famous for anything positive which goes from the top just dissipates into the huge level of bureaucracy. And Putin's critics, for example, often say that he asks the government to do something again and again and again, and nothing changes. So apparently this is not exactly the case. It does change, and it again, judging by your own experience, it is actually progressing the situation in Russia in many aspects. Even, of course, like in any country, there are still problems, and nothing can be changed overnight. And especially in a huge country like Russia is, of course, the largest on the planet. It is a huge. If you compare it to the huge ship, it cannot be turned on a dime. So it takes time. A lot of processes have their own momentum. A lot of people with entrenched interests will probably resist some of that, and it is again up to the government, up to the cadre which Putin brought, and I hope, I don't know if this is the case, but I hope manage to position to the key roles which can actually overcome that resistance of the bureaucracy, which does happen definitely. That could be done definitely. And again, some of the statements, which I probably will talk about that later, are maybe just declarations now. But yet again, we can see that some declarations which were made years ago, all of a sudden you can see that they are actually not declarations anymore, and they are already in practice. So again, over to you.
Cool. Yeah, I was born in 1974, so I spent 47 years in the U.S. and then 2 years here. How about you, Serge? I don't know you. I'm just curious. I think it's really cool that I'm an American who has recently moved here, and you were born in the Soviet Union, and now you're living in Chicago. So what years were you in the Soviet Union or in Russia, and what years were you in America?
Yeah, I am in minority right now. We have 2 Americans living in Russia and me, on this side of the pond, as they say. Yeah, I am 12 years older than you. I was born in 1962, and I moved to the States in 95. So it will be soon, 30 years since I've been living here.
Wow.
Well,
Okay,
I managed not to lose my Russian accent, by the way.
So I would think with that experience, you would be tempted to have a negative outlook on Russia even today. Is that the case or no?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, cool.
Not negative. Actually, my experiences in the United States, and I've never had any illusions when I was moving here. I had some expectations, but no illusions. But my experiences here actually cured my negative, in many respects, stance towards the Soviet Union. Actually, because as many joke in Russia now, it turned out to be that all the Bolshevik propaganda about capitalists turned out to be truth. So indeed, yes, I see myself that many things which we in the Soviet Union, when I was a teenager or a young adult, we were joking about the rotting system, and lo and behold, it is definitely not very healthy. Let's put it this way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not ready to say capitalism is bad necessarily. It's like a gun. It can be used good or it can be used bad. That's my opinion as of right now.
Yes. Yeah.
But I'm fluid in it, because I thought Russia was bad and it's not. So I'm very open-minded right now. So I mean, I think it's maybe off topic, but I'm just curious. I think it's cool because you went to America in '95. So you went to America maybe when it was at its peak in some ways, because you're right after Reagan and then Clinton, although, you can complain about them for different things. At least there was success to a degree, you could say, under Clinton as well. And you came there kind of like right in some ways at a peak before it started to decline. So it's just interesting, what I'm just curious what your perspective is on America versus, I guess, what it was when you arrived and what it is today.
So my first, when I arrived here, I think it was just after the O.J. Simpson's trial.
Oh, wow.
And then the next thing was the Monica Lewinsky affair.
Yeah.
And I have to say that now some affair like that is not even possible, and that's probably a very good thing. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. You mean because you think the media and the internet is such that you couldn't get away with such things?
No, what I mean that the current person in the White House just will not be able to do anything with another Monica Lewinsky. even if she were very willing.
Okay. Yeah. Very good.
All of a sudden, I have a craving for ice cream.
Yeah, but with your throat, it would be a not very good idea.
So guys, this kind of touches on something I wanted to ask Serge about anyway. Is there was a very small part of what Putin talked about was the military aspects, what's been going on, repelling aggression of international terrorism and, NATO bullying Russia, the United States wanting to tear Russia up into little chunks. He talked a little bit about the improved combat capabilities, the new weapons that have been deployed, the new ones that are coming down the pike. And, for the small amount that he spoke of this, this seems to be like the only thing that I see in the Western mainstream media. Are you seeing anything else in regards to this speech, Serge? Any of the positive aspects of what he wants to do for his people, or is it all just that little box of, Putin says he's going to nuke us?
Are you talking about what I see in the Western media?
Yeah, what you see in the West.
I have to confess that I deliberately don't pay attention to Western media is saying. I only get like reflections of what is going on that front from you, for example, when you talk about InfoWars or something like that. Yeah. So yeah, but from those reflections, I didn't hear from any mainstream media anything but from the other hand, why would they be interested in some domestic Russian affairs? They talk about possible developments with NATO versus Russia. Yet, well, that's totally understandable. There's some commentators, let's say, like the Duran, they talk about some aspects of Putin's speech, domestic side of it, but otherwise, I wouldn't even expect them to be interested in domestic affairs in Russia, except if it's Navalny, of course. If it's Navalny, oh yeah. But there was no Navalny in Putin's speech, so obviously it's not worth mentioning by them.
Well, I do know that the Daily Mail in the UK took a whole 5 minutes after the end of his speech to put out their first article and headline that Putin was threatening to nuke the West. So,
and I'm sure that article was written before he even started his speech.
Probably. They all followed up pretty quickly after that.
Kevin, do you know what he said that made them print that line? Was there anything at all that they were grasping at, or was it completely made up? Because, like I said, I was listening to it while watching Christoph push Maxime in the snow.
Yeah, actually, let me see if I've got his quote here. If not, I can pretty much tell you what he talked about. He did say that the West needs to be careful of putting troops into Ukraine, NATO specifically. And, a lot of this was aimed towards what had been said in the previous days over in NATO countries. Macron had said something about putting NATO troops in Ukraine, and Germany was talking about giving longer range missiles to Ukraine so that they could destroy the bridge, they could hit all areas of Crimea. And so what the president said was they need to be careful and remember that Russia has weapons that can reach their territory too, and that putting NATO troops in Ukraine to fight against Russia would ultimately likely lead to a nuclear war. And, his viewpoint of it was that, the neocons in the United States, if they are losing the battle in Ukraine, they've previously talked about using tactical nuclear weapons in Ukraine against Russia. And of course, that would be an automatic escalation by Russia to use tactical nukes as well. And of course, a return of tactical nukes then becomes larger bombs, and all of a sudden everybody's nuking everybody. And Putin said it would be foolish because this would end civilization. So it was kind of a warning that Russia will protect itself, and that the West should not escalate more because it could have negative effects on the entire civilization of the world.
Okay. Okay. Well, if you're just an American and you just believe what you're told in the news, that's going to sound scary to you. I understand that, but at the same time, like
Yeah.
when I was listening to this, and towards the beginning, I made a note. He said something like he was talking about regular people donating to the front lines, like sending goods and help to the front lines. And I made a note of it because it gave me a interesting mix of like, warm, fuzzy feeling and also disturbed feeling. Because it's scary because I'm like, wow, I'm living in a country with my children where there is a front line. And at the same time, it had a nostalgic feeling, like a World War II feeling, like I'm a part of people. My wife is Russian. My kids speak the language, where we're in a country where there is a front line and we are, hoping and praying for each other. At the same time, I understand there are Americans, many of which are my friends, that don't know anything about Russia, and they're going to hear his speech and they're going to think about this special military operation, and they're going to think, this is all bad guys, this is all evil. So I made a note of it because for me it was just like, I'm open-minded now, and of course I have a vested interest in Russia being the good guys, and I believe Russia is, but I still, because I spent so many years in America, it was just this weird turning inside me of like, whoa, like what's happening? My head is spinning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it would be very easy to take that statement as a threat. I view it more as a warning, but then I had a lot of help from Jay Tulip. She's not with us tonight. Her husband, Timothy, is. But I had a lot of help from her understanding what was said in the Russian versus what came out in the American translations. So, I have the advantage of having a little different viewpoint on some of the points, but.
And again, Kevin, what really helps me is I'm often during this time thinking about the Cuban Missile Crisis and how the US was like, we will have World War III over this. This is not going to happen. You are not going to put missiles in Cuba, period. And some in DC might look at Russia with judgment, or people not even in DC, regular Americans, and think, how dare you? Russia, how dare you, Putin, feel so strongly that NATO can't go into Russia? Why can't you just let NATO go into, not Russia, Ukraine, sorry. You know what I mean? It's like they can't see it the other way, even though to me, it's the exact same situation. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, and
Well,
then
Serge,
one of the, excuse yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say, Serge, you may be able to speak to this a little bit about what Americans don't realize actually led up to the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yeah, but exactly, you read my mind, because there is one of the most popular memes in Russia now. It's "Это другое." This is totally different, because Americans even now, and I had this conversation once with some guy, he told my age, maybe slightly older, so he would not remember it because he was just a kid then. So he learned about what led to the Cuban Missile Crisis, so-called. But he was completely sure that the Soviets put missiles on Cuba before the Americans put missiles in Turkey and Italy, which were targeting the Soviet Union. So again, as I mentioned in one of our conversations with Kevin, so the Soviets, they almost never initiated hostilities. They almost always reacted somehow to whatever hostile intents or actions by the West were against them. And Cuban crisis was one of those. And the problem is that with Americans whom I know personally, my unfortunately don't have very close friends here, but they are very insular. They don't give a damn about what's going on outside of their personal lives, their jobs, or their country, even when they are very educated, cultured, traveled, whatever. Because like you ask something like about the Cuban missile crisis, for example, and they know that something like that happened, but no details whatsoever. And of course, with that attitude, again, it's a joke about that they can't even find Ukraine on the map. Maybe it's not the case. It's a relatively large country. It's easy to find. Plus, we have Google now and Google Maps, but they just don't care. That's the problem. And what they do care is what is given to them by the mass media. And well, maybe it's not that they watch CNN or MSNBC now, but many do. And they get that information from those sources. And when I say, or used to say, because I don't watch or participate in discussions on Facebook anymore, but they would ask me like, who is that Michelizzi? Why are you sending me link to this? Look what CNN says. Like, you still watch CNN? Are you an idiot? Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, it's very funny. I wonder who watches network television anymore, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So, one of the things he talked about quite a bit was the economy, the global economy, BRICS, catching up to the G7 and, in a few years actually exceeding the GDP of the G7 countries. Do you guys have any thoughts on that? Is the dollar system going down the toilet, or will it just get smaller?
I mean, I can go first because I don't have much to say on it because I'm not a numbers guy. But I did make a note that he said that I think their GDP grew faster than the G7 and the EU. And I was like, is that true? And I wrote it down because I was like, I got to ask Kevin. And I guess Serge as well. So is this true, guys? Because that's fantastic. Well, let's say it's amazing. Fantastic would be dependent upon where you live. Right? So.
Yeah, go ahead, Kevin, because you're a numbers guy. I am not.
Yeah. I don't have the numbers in front of me. Chat for a second, Serge, and I will actually pull that up because I know I have that in a document here.
Right.
I mean, sanctions, I mean, that's incredible.
Yeah, actually, that is one of the most important events or processes, rather, over the last few years. It is that crash test Russia underwent since the sanctions actually started not 2 years ago, much earlier, and some of them actually survived even the 1990s. If I'm not mistaken, there are some sanctions which are still going on since the Soviet times. I don't remember which, but I believe there are some still going on. But the very fact that Russian economy didn't crash as everyone thought it will in February and March 2022, it is a huge argument for that the system which is being built in that country is livable, is survivable, whatever you call it. So that is most important thing. Yeah. So the exact numbers of GDP or whatever, they're of course important, but the problem is with with the statistics, you can turn the data whichever way you want if you need to.
Yeah, you can make the numbers say anything you want.
Yeah, exactly. You know, like if every other American eats 2 chickens, it means that every American eats a chicken, right? According to the statistics, or something like. Yeah. So I don't care about that much about the numbers, as important as they are. It's the results you can see and feel and touch that is much more important.
I'm glad you said that, Serge, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Because I also feel like numbers can be twisted. And, who am I? What do I know? But, I spent 47 years in America and living in Florida, New York, and California. I've been here for 2 years. I have a wife. I have 2 kids that are still kids. I have 3 kids that are adults, 2 of which are in university right now. I'm living in Moscow, right? So that's my reality. I also have a YouTube channel where I'm making 10 to 30 minute entertaining, funny, interesting videos going around Russia. To be fair, so far only on the west side of Russia, but not only in Moscow. Going to St. Petersburg, going to other small cities like Voronezh, population of 1 million, and everything in between, like some tiny places. And I'm going to the grocery store. I'm living in a flat. I'm taking the kids to different events. I'm out on the street. And for my reality, everything is pretty darn nice. It's pretty fantastic, especially if I compare it to where I came from. Now, I was living in Florida mostly of all those states, and it's not terrible, but I feel like it is very applicable, that story of the frog in the boiling water, where you just slowly turn up the heat and it boils to death. Whereas if you threw it in the water boiling, it would jump out. I feel like in the US, the heat has just been slowly turning up and things have been slowly, not good. And, my adult daughter who goes to university by herself every day here, that certainly would not happen in New York. Not at all. No way, no how, and I know what it's like to live in many different states. And I know that you always have to be aware of your surroundings. You should always be aware
Are
of
you
your
saying that
surroundings.
you don't want to pay the price of freedom?
What? Say that again?
I'm saying that are you saying that you are not willing to pay the price of freedom?
Exactly, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Is this the price of freedom? Does freedom mean that I have to live in fear? I mean, I remember hearing like 3 years ago that what can I say here to be careful the algorithm. So there was a movement that is specific to one skin color in America, and they were coming to town, and there was this fear in my small town that they were going to riot and burn things, and they were coming for a political reason. And I remember literally going outside and watering my house and making it wet and putting the sprinkler on it to be sure, to be careful, as I'm living there with my wife and 5 children, that if mobs came down the street and they decided to throw anything at my house, it would be so soaking wet, we wouldn't burn to death, And I'm thinking about stuff that we have
that's a
and putting it
sobering
in
thought,
bags,
Oh yeah.
So,
But
So-
actually, I wanted to say quickly that I don't know if you've ever conducted that experiment, but I'm pretty sure if you just throw a frog in a boiling water, it will not be able to jump out. It will just die quickly.
I thought that too, but if you don't think too deeply, it's kind of a cool story. It makes sense, right?
So Joseph, I dug up those numbers you were asking about.
Yeah.
And this kind of plays into what Serge was saying about twisting the numbers a little bit.
Okay.
The numbers given were in 1992, the G7's GDP was 45.7%, and BRICS was 16.5%. Of course, back then, Russia was part of what was actually the G8. So Russia has been removed from it, so that automatically drops those numbers some. Now in 2022, Russia had been taken out. The G7's percentage had been down to 30.3%. That could be accounted for in part by Russia leaving. And BRICS was at 31.5. The projection for 2028 is the G7 will be at 27% and BRICS at almost 37%. So almost a complete flip.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And briefly, it is again what they count as GDP, because
right.
Yeah, you know.
So
yeah, well, like I said, I mean, I can look at my own life and how I live and what I see is good, you know.
Yep.
So if Russia and government is saying the numbers are good and I'm seeing the numbers are good, you know, why would I think otherwise? And not, you know, yeah, you could, maybe there's a disconnect, but this is what the average person in Russia is going to think, and I don't think they'd be wrong to think so.
But I'll give you a warning on that, because they talk about what the inflation rate is here. And, you know, we hear here in Crimea that the inflation rate is, you know, only a couple of percent and it's dropping. But there's an artificial inflation rate that you're hearing about, because my wife was buying these bricks of butter at the supermarket, and she was getting 400 grams 2 years ago. Now they sell that same block of butter for the same price 6 months ago. It had dropped to 350 grams. And it's selling now for the same price yet, and it's down to 330 grams. So even though the price hasn't risen, meaning the numbers you're getting is the cost is the same for butter, it actually isn't, because they're decreasing the amount. So there's hidden inflation in everything.
I've heard this in America
it
too,
happens
right?
exactly the same with Doritos, as recently the president of the
Absolutely.
United States stated.
Well, Doritos is different because air costs a lot of money.
There you go.
Of course, there's a lot of hot air over there, so maybe that's what they're filling the bag up with.
I don't eat Doritos anymore, so I don't care, but maybe that would bother Josiah. Well, I mean, since we're on numbers, I wanted to ask you, maybe you know or you don't know, or you can try to look while we talk about something else, but he was talking about the poverty numbers and how he wanted to work on that. And I didn't write it down because, like I said, I was outside with my kids, but the numbers didn't sound that bad. Like the percentages were in the single digits. Do we know? Because I often hear from the West that Russia's just this terribly poor place, which, yes, I have driven through poor looking areas, just like I've driven through poor looking areas in America. And I have been curious to know, how poor is Russia as far as like rural areas? Because he was talking about something like 7-10% of poverty or something like that, and that didn't sound like crazy and insanely terrible to me. I don't know if you guys know or not, or what. I just made a
I
note
think,
about
if
that.
I remember correctly, he did not talk about percentages of the total population. He was talking about absolute numbers, and then in percentages in certain categories of population. So you believe that the number was 9 million, which are below the poverty line, which is much lower than before. And that in some categories, like, for example, with the families with more than 3 children or something like that, that percentage of those families below the poverty line is much higher than in others, if I remember correctly. Because again, as I said, I did not have a chance to listen carefully to every word, but that was my
You're saying
impression.
Russia might be 9 million under the poverty line.
Yes, that's if I believe
145
that's
million.
what the Putin said. Yes.
And he
how-
said that in the year 2000, there were more than 42 million Russians below the poverty line. But the people living below the poverty line has declined to 13 million, 13 and a half
13
million.
million. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
did
he
not
wants
remember
to,
correctly.
yeah, and he wants to change that even more.
So it's only a third of what it used to be in about a 20-year period.
Correct.
I mean, if that's true, that's wonderful. I mean, how many
Yeah.
kids are suffering less because of this? You know,
Yeah.
and then my next thought is, how does that compare to an, let's say, quote, average country or the U.S.? You know, does the U.S. have 18 million under the poverty line, for instance? You know, because the U.S. is like double Russia's population, right?
Yeah, about that 330 million or something like that, I believe. Yeah, but yet again, just like with the numbers of unemployment data, when unemployment was rising, they just changed the way they count unemployment here in the States. So now, if you are not looking actively for work, you are not counted as unemployed.
Exactly,
You
which
know?
is not cool, because that it's been like that for over a decade, I think. You know?
Yeah, it happened under Clinton, I believe, in 1990s.
Oh, man. So it's
actually.
like 2 decades.
Mhm.
It's like, so if you stop looking for work, we don't consider you unemployed anymore. You're just somebody's grandma.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So the numbers I have here is 9% of Russia's population currently lives below the poverty line, and 13% of the United States' population lives below the poverty line as of 2023.
And
so
that's
42
where
million
the
people.
nine came from for me. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they
Well, if
currently have
that's
42
true, by
million.
that measure, Russia's doing better, if that's true, and by that measure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Plus, I am totally sure that given how they count the unemployment, that those numbers here in the States are probably a little bit different.
Probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So you mean it could be worse in the U.S. because
Yes.
D.C. is willing to manipulate their numbers?
Yep.
Well,
yeah, because there's a lot of people, particularly after a medical condition we won't talk about due to the algorithm, that became unemployed. And, when they ran their unemployment out, because that lasted for, more than 2 years.
right.
And those people, when their unemployment ran out, were no longer considered unemployed and living below the poverty line. Even though they may be thrown out of their houses, they may have no income.
Right. Wow.
And who knows? Well, the thing that I do know is that Putin has made steps to lower that even more, because effective March 1st, yesterday, he has increased the minimum wage, the amount of money paid to retired people, the amount paid to disabled people. So he is increasing those amounts already. And of course, he's looking at making housing better for big families.
And by the way, I would caution you maybe to avoid that over personification, even though it's completely natural. So again, Putin declares that, but Putin is not the Russian government. It is a face, it is the head of the Russian government. But when you say that Putin did, Putin that, again, it is completely natural, but it is not his personal will. He just projects the will of the government, I would say.
Right. And if that's the case, that's a good thing. And he, according to my translation, he was saying things like, I've asked the government. I've asked the government.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
So that's
Yeah.
good. You know, as a business owner, because I ran a small business for 20 years, and I know what it's like to make payroll and have to keep up with the constantly rising minimum wage. I'm just being open.
Mhm.
Whenever I hear a government saying we're going to increase the minimum wage, it just makes my skin crawl. And I feel like it is just a manipulation. It is just a numbers game because I'm running my small business and I'm trying not to go out of business. And now I get to pay all my staff more. And you know what that means? That doesn't mean no more chocolate cake for me. That means I get to now raise the prices on all of my customers, because if I don't, I go out of business. And then my customers have to make more money. And then just everything goes up. It's like a rising tide, you know, raising the minimum wage. When you add everything up, long term, it doesn't do a darn thing. Am I wrong?
No, but there also, you know, are there ways to prevent that from happening or to make it less of a problem? You know, one of the things that Putin has asked the government to do, and I posted something that they had in the Duma about a week before his speech, was a progressive income tax. And, you know, the first comment was, well, a progressive income tax, the richer people, I'll give you a minute. Yeah. The richer people use loopholes and corporations use loopholes to not pay that higher tax. But he did specifically say that he wants the loopholes closed so that they cannot bypass paying the higher taxes on their incomes. You had a comment, Serge?
Yeah, actually, for me, because
Serge
again, I
did.
live. Yeah, sorry. Did you want to say something, Joe? Uh-oh.
He said you have a comment. I said Serge did. I was already open. I already spilled my emotions.
Yeah. So anyhow, for me, that part was, even though it was not in the same part of the speech, it was in 3 different places. But that was the most interesting thing for me in the whole speech, because actually, let me backpack a little bit, backpedal rather. That how increase of minimum wage was done in the Soviet Union. I remember one when I was working after school before I was called by the military in the ranks. So I was working as a drafter in the engineering bureau. And because I was very good at drafting, they kind of placed me, even though I was like 18, 19 years old. They put me like they don't remember, it's like a second grade. I wasn't like on the minimal level. So one day it was announced that everyone everyone's salary will be increased. But they managed to do that without increasing the fund of money to pay the salary from. How? By knocking everyone down slightly in the position. So instead of being on the second level, they bumped me down to the first. So basically, I stayed on the same level of salary, even though everyone was. And now, you know, to everyone, announcement was that the minimum wage goes up. So you can do tricks like that, of course. But anyhow. So about the taxation, you know, what's the good leaders? One of the most important qualities probably is to have a good ears to listen what the people say, want, and react to that. Because for years, it is not a secret It is discussed on every popular talking shows in Russia, probably, if not every day, but every other day, is the question of justice. That our system is unjust, that we have, I'm talking about Russia, that's what they say, that we have inequality even greater than in the United States, and this is not a good thing, it has to change. And finally, I don't think ever it was said by the president from such a, like a tall podium, that this is something, at least as a declaration, that they listened to the people. Not only that 13% flat tax might go away, and that probably will upset some expats or immigrants from the West to Russia who went there precisely because of that flat tax. But also what was mentioned, that some people who gained their riches in the 1990s using those economic troubles, I got, so something might happen even on that front, because everyone was, oh, no, we're not going to take away whatever was, when that privatization was happening and all that in the 1990s. So maybe something will happen even there, and that will make a lot of people happy, because indeed many of those oligarchs, they behaved completely. It was completely immoral, especially in Russia, where that question of justice is very important. That was like a thorn in the side of many people. Then the taxation, of course, because indeed, like if you pay 13% flat tax, 13% out of $100 is $13. 13% out of 1,000 is a little bit, of course, more in absolute numbers, but still you have much more room, much more margin after you pay the tax than the one who has only $100. I mean, it is just completely understandable to see the injustice of that tax, because on the top of that you have a lot of other things. I don't know how those taxes are paid in Russia, but for example, you have sales tax in the United States. So if you have to pay sales tax, for example, in Russia, or something similar, some equivalent, that means that your tax actually is much higher than 13%. And again, if you are on the poorer scale of population, that takes much larger chunk of what you can actually use to pay for stuff than for somebody who is actually rich. So again, I don't know if that declaration will lead to something, but the very fact that was declared, to me, it shows that government listened to people finally.
Yeah.
And again, it will make a lot of people happy. Again, will it happen or not? Because it will be huge resistance to that, I'm pretty sure. But hopefully it will change.
Yeah, we do have a sales tax here. It's the VAT, but it's in the price that's on the shelf. So I couldn't even tell you what the percentage is. You go in, the price sticker says this much, that's what you pay.
Yeah. That's something which tricked me, because I didn't understand why I have to pay more when I don't remember what I bought first when I came to Chicago. So it was like a $10 or $9.99, and all of a sudden I'm asked to pay like 11 or something like that. Like what?
I had a woman in my coffee shop argue with me over that once. She's, well, you advertise this price, but you're charging me that. And it's like, Well, that's because the government is charging me that. So
You had a coffee shop, Kevin?
I had a couple of coffee shops in California.
Nice. Was it the Coffee Bean?
Actually, it was the Sunlight Coffee, spelled Sonlight.
What years were they open?
From, oh gee, you're gonna make me think, huh?
Well, don't think too long. Our live watch count is dropping as you think.
Yeah. So something like 2000 to 2006. And then I roasted beans for a while after that, because that's what I actually enjoyed doing, roasting and selling beans.
I left California in 2000, so I missed your coffee shop. Darn it.
Yeah. Well, we were in the Chico area, so, and Mount Shasta.
Okay. Cool. Very cool. Wow.
So Putin also talked about Russia being a stronghold of traditional values, and that Western countries are deliberately destroying moral norms and family institutions, pushing their nations towards extinction. And he went on to say, our choice is shared by most people in the world. Do you think that most of the world has these strong traditional values? And what effect do you see liberalism having on the West?
I hope so. I hope so. And I saw a statistic that there's more people on Earth living in the BRICS nations than in the European Union, or not the European Union necessarily, but the West, let's say, right? Yeah, I made note of that he talked about traditional family values, and he talked about improving the birth rate. And I was very glad that he did, because statistically that is an issue. And I'm glad that it's on his heart, or at least on the agenda, to push for traditional family values, to say it from that stage, to talk about improving the birth rate. And I hope that the world understands this. I mean, as a Christian, I understand this. If you appreciate your culture, you need to have 3 kids or more, otherwise your culture won't continue. And I'm often thinking about what's going to be the future beyond me, because I'm mortal and I won't live forever, um, and I'm very glad that he said that, yeah, I could say more, but I don't know if you guys want to add to it. But
Yeah, why not? Go on.
Well, I mean, so I've had 4 biological kids. I got 5 kids. I'm a Christian. I see that religious people have more children. They're thinking more about life beyond themselves. Not religious people tend to not have so many children. And I understand, technology comes along, the birth control pill comes along, everyone is in university longer. There's the window for having children is shrinking. And then all of a sudden you have a developing country that doesn't have enough kids. And this is a worldwide problem. And so it would be great if Russia is a country where the economy is now doing well, and they're now going to think and provide incentive for their families to have more kids. And if they can talk about that in school as the kids are growing up and becoming teenagers and thinking about becoming adults, and having this on their heart and on their mind that they're going to grow up and they're going to get married and they're going to have 3 kids or more, I think that's great. And I also made note that he mentioned that the state is going to pay for part of your mortgage if you have 3 kids or more. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. I got to talk to my wife about that, since we have more than 3 kids. So yeah. And also he mentioned, encouraging businesses to encourage field trips for children. Because like I said, I mean, I've got kids that are kids and I've got kids that are adults. So I'm looking at the glass from both directions right now. And, I mean, I just did a video on my channel where my How old is Christoph? 8? Yes. My 8-year-old and I and my wife and our other little kid. But I was noticing my 8-year-old. We went to Vedenha. We went through the museums, and he's been going to field trips with his school. And, it was on his heart. He wanted to go to the Egyptian Museum. And then he wanted to buy like an Egyptian statuette, which is like a mom holding a baby. And then he wanted to go to the atom exhibit and look at how the atom has been explored and we've used it scientifically. And I was just kind of moved. And even saying it now, I feel like I could cry if I were to let myself. I see this 8-year-old little boy who is becoming a person and taking interest in specific things. And he's gaining this interest, not just from watching Hollywood movies, but from the enrichment that he's being given and the education that he's being given and things that he's thinking about and taking interest in that I might not necessarily notice, and anyway, I lost my train of thought, but it's moving. And I think that it's great, if I am living in a place that is fostering the right culture and the right future for the next generation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I'm one of those who had only one child. Plus, I'm an atheist, so here you go.
Okay.
But so what's needed for better birth rate? It's just conditions for the families, for the people to have no worries about supporting the children, which is not very easy thing to do, right? So when you decide to not to wait until you are like very well into your career to have a child or children, you need to know that if both parents are working, that someone will take care of your children at home. You can use babysitters as its usual thing in the United States, but to have a system of kindergartens like what used to be in the Soviet Union, even with all the like deficiencies and stuff like that, but that actually was what was mentioned by Putin in his speech, that many kindergartens are still holdovers from the Soviet Union, which will need to renovate
the structures, at least.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. Yeah, well, structures, the buildings, maybe not under the same management, probably.
Right. Not the same.
But the thing is that people don't need to wait until they're in their 40s to have the first child.
They can.
Yeah. So again, it just probably maybe not even healthy especially for women. But yet again, you need to start early. But if you want to start early, let's say in like your late teens, early 20s, what was usual and probably still is in Russia, you need the system to support you as a family and your children, which is, of course, good living conditions, good educational facilities, good things for recreation, like, for example, those trips, something which would allow you to send your child for 3 months every summer to some camp when they will socialize and enjoy and learn and stuff like that. So yes, if this is the case, why not have more kids?
Yeah. And to be fair to people that have less kids, with technology, we've learned that the human brain is not fully developed till age 25. And also we've learned that it's safer for women to stop having kids at 35. So what that means is you have a 10-year window to have 3 kids. Now, if you have a kid every 2 years, which would be the average amount of time, if you're trying to have a lot of kids, from what I understand, if you're in a native population, you don't think about it. You naturally have a kid every 2 years. So then you have a window for only 5 kids. And, only, for some people, that's like crazy. But if you're trying to grow the population and 3 is just normal, you're going to need some people to start having 5 kids, or you're going to need, traditional family values people from around the world to move into their country, which is what I'm trying to say on my channel. People need to come here. But the window of opportunity is short, and we can feel like, well, we're alive for 80 years, 100 years. We have plenty of time. You don't really have plenty of time. I mean, you kind of have to make things happen, And I remember being like 35 and feeling like, oh, life is good. I was talking to my friend who was 35, and he was like, well, yeah, of course you're not depressed, Joe. Of course you think life is fine. You have a business and you have a house and you have a wife and you have kids. And I don't have that yet. And I'm 35, So, yeah, I mean, if you're a young person, you're listening to this podcast and you're wondering what to do, I mean, definitely, make things happen, don't fall asleep. You do not have forever, there's my speech. I'm done.
So Joseph, you did make one comment that was kind of a question that was playing on my mind. With all this, we're gonna, we pay a woman this much for 1 child, we pay him this much for 2 children, and Putin's saying he wants to double that for 3 children, giving subsidized mortgages, things like that. Do you foresee Russia may run into the problem the US does, where people who aren't working start having children to make money?
Maybe in 20 years. I wouldn't see that being a problem now, because these things take time. But whenever I hear of big government programs as a business owner, I start to, because ideally, you would just be responsible and manage your own money and take care of things. And like, as an American, like in the old West times, there was no government to take care of you, really. You had to go to church, and the church community would take care of you. You had no choice, right? That was your backstop. That was your support. Whenever you're talking about government programs and the government doing things, of course. So I have a lot of kids, so I like that. That sounds great. Yeah, pay us money, help us out. But at the same time, I know that whatever money the government has, unless they're like printing money like crazy and about to, destroy the government in a couple of decades, like some other countries, the government, any money the government has is tax money they've taken from all the regular people. So they're kind of saying, I'm going to take more of what everyone has, and we're going to decide how it's going to be distributed. Where ideally, if everyone could be responsible, ideally the government would have less programs. Like if everyone was a responsible parent that worked hard and raised their kids up, ideally you wouldn't need any government programs except for the case of a catastrophic accident where people were injured, right? But even then, if you had strong religious institutions, you wouldn't need much government assistance, for instance.
Yeah. And as somebody who has as many children as you do that you're raising, you and your wife work quite hard, and you raise the children well, and you don't need assistance because you are earning what it takes to raise those children.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. We try. So, for sure.
He has got some good kids.
I see them, or some of them, right now.
Oh, running behind me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,
and
in the mirror.
And Peter Pan just ended. I could hear it. And now I'm wondering, oh no, are they going to do something? And as we were talking, I saw someone put a brown couch cushion on the floor. You see that, guys?
I see the guy who put it there. And I do this every show I have with you. I'm going to advertise Aurora's channel for her.
Oh, great. So yeah, guys, if you don't know, my channel is Expat American, and I'm in Moscow having a good time with my family, but also it is
I'm
deadly
subscribed.
serious.
I'm subscribed.
Oh, you are? Okay, cool,
Yep.
cool. Yeah. I mean,
As-
because we want to let the West know that Russia's a normal place, and I think it's an important thing to do. And I try to be as sincere as possible and give real information and have a good time because I'm competing against kitty cat videos. So
I share your video on "Is Russia a Scary Place?" all over the place.
oh, thanks, man. You know, I refer to that in almost every video because it's a good starting point. You know, because people don't. I think if people in the West watch that, you know, their heads might explode. A good sequel to that is Russia dirty? You know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, everybody, you should subscribe to Aurora's channel. She does some good videos.
Yeah, she's done a few, but yeah, she's my 19-year-old daughter. I only have one girl out of 5. So, how long do you want us to go, Kevin? Do you want us to like throw out our final thoughts or what? What are you thinking?
I think you should throw out your final thoughts. We have gone longer than we normally do. Audience is still quite engaged, so
Well, I mean, I have a good list here I could throw out and we could make comments on. You know, I usually end at 1:29, so we could go for like another 10 minutes.
okay.
One thing I was curious to ask you, Kevin, and maybe you know too, Serge, because you know, I was completely innocent to this whole thing, but Putin said special military operation, and I'm often saying special military operation on my channel. And I've noticed from negative comments like haters, oh, you can't say war, you know. And it's made me think, is that a thing? Am I not allowed to say war? But when he said it today in his speech, I thought, you know, I don't think he's being manipulative, to be honest. I think it's fair. I think for him, it is a special military operation because I think war would mean you've come to take over. And I don't think, I believe in his heart, in his mind, it is a special military operation. It is to stop the encroachment, let's say, on his territory. So what, have I missed something here? Are you not allowed to say war
Well,
or
I
what's
don't
the
know
deal?
about allowed or not, but the thing is that contrary to the very popular view in the West or outside of Russia, maybe not only in the West, Russia is actually, since time immemorial, is actually a very legalistic nation and state. And Putin, on the top of that, he is actually educated as a lawyer.
He was, right? Or is, right?
Yeah. So he
Yeah.
actually, in legal terms, absolutely correct. This is not a war. The war has not been declared even by the Ukraine against Russia. There is no
Nice.
state of war from
Very
neither
good.
side. So
Very
yes,
good.
it is not a war.
Very good.
End of story.
Very good.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was going to say. Russia has not declared war on Ukraine. It is and continues to be a special operation to go in and accomplish certain goals, which is to protect the Russian speakers. So, you know, the United States, technically, you could say they're not at war with Russia either because they haven't declared war either. NATO has not. Now,
Yeah.
everybody knows they're supplying weapons and, you know, there's fighting going on in Ukraine. So you could say it is a war, but legally, actually, you can use the term war. Putin prefers people use special military operation, but the law says that the punishment will be to anyone who shares false information about the war or the special military operation or the Russian armed services. So that's technically what's illegal. But, you know, if we had Arkady here, he could get into the, you know, the lawyerese of it all. But
Yeah, because someone commented once recently, I like your channel, but whenever you say special military operation, I think that you're afraid to speak openly while living over there, and maybe it's not a safe place. And I told him, yeah, I am afraid, but not of the Russian government. I'm afraid of the algorithm. And for me, it is safer not to confuse the algorithm and say certain words. So I like the term
agree.
SMO.
So,
yeah.
Who's asking, Arm, why war hasn't been declared? Because it isn't a war. There were very specific goals. Very limited number of military personnel are in the field over there on the Russian side. Russia's still fighting with less than 500,000 men over there. The numbers still range around 300, 350,000 troops. So,
you mean actively engaged in fighting?
Actively engaged in fighting, yeah. But somebody in the audience was asking why war hasn't been declared.
Yeah,
right.
Precisely because, plus, if it was the real war, the events would turn a little bit different. Among other things, there would be no all that constellation of satellites, for example, which are monitoring and providing targeting and all that by the Western countries over the Ukraine. They would be shut down immediately. There would be no flying drones or AWACS by the NATO or the Black Sea basin, for example. It would all be gone by now. It is precisely because it is not a war, it is possible.
Good.
So it's not only legal in legal terms, it's only those legal aspect of the events, they have very serious implications in real life. So
So, yeah. So I'm going to make a comment to one of our commenters out in the chat. Gloria, it's time for you to start being quiet because you're talking about stuff you don't know. Actually, Russia's gas and oil production is up since the start of the special military operation. But since you haven't taken my suggestion to comment on your negative comments, I am putting you in a timeout.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, it sounds funny because I was a child care director for almost 20 years.
Hey, I believe in giving fair warning first, and if not, a good swat on the rear end is good. So,
oh man, can't say that in America, Kevin. Not to a lady.
Yeah, well,
yeah, you are
Or
in this
female,
in
let's
this
say.
in this sense, you are in complete lockstep with the Russian government. By the way, we give you a warning. Don't do that. Don't do that. You know, like we have a father here who probably tells his children, or probably told them, and they've learned by now, don't put your fingers in the outlet. You will be shocked. I want to try. I told you will be shot. I told you it will happen.
Guys,
Now
let me
don't
burn
try.
through my other notes, my thoughts, and please pause, say something about them. But I'll just run through my list before we run out of time, because I do think for replayability it would be good if we stop by 129. I like that he talked about life expectancy, and then he went on to talk specifically about active longevity. So not just living till 73 or 78 or 100, but he talks specifically about helping people to be active while they're alive, not just being obese, and alive from 65 to 75, but to be active. He talked a lot about that, and that's where I made note that this is more specific conversations and concrete things that he's trying to do. I liked when he said that as of 2021, Russia restores more trees than it uses. I was shocked at that. I thought that was incredible. And I think all the Greenpeace people in America probably don't want to hear that, but I mean, they should know. I also liked him talking about environmental tourism and having a year-round resort like Baikal, because I'd like to go there one day for my show. I like that he talked about and not being dependent, I think, on Western aircraft and having a more thorough railroad system. Although I didn't even notice that they needed a more thorough railroad system. So all these things I thought were very good. And I liked how he ended it with "We are one big family," because I'm thinking in spiritual terms and thinking in terms of a family and my family, and then by extension, other people that I could perhaps help if I have time to be like a family. So I think that was a very important note for him to end on. So those are my notes. I don't know if you guys want to say anything.
I think, just playing off of that a little bit, I think another thing that I liked is, they made a requirement that all Duma members are driving Russian-made cars. The police departments are using Russian-made cars. And he talked about, the train systems, the coaches and things being Russian, new school buses being Russian-made, the new transportation facilities being Russian-made. So he's really pushing to keep the money in Russia. And, I like that. I think Russia should be doing more production of their own. Somebody in the comments said, thank goodness for sanctions. And I think it's been good for Russia.
Buy American. Oh, I mean, buy Russian.
Buy Russian. I buy Russian whenever possible.
The sanctions have absolutely been good, right? Because in the 90s, the Soviet Union collapsed and American capitalism came in with McDonald's and all this stuff. And they operated here for a couple of decades. And Russians worked alongside these people. And now for them to be basically forced out because of sanctions, well, Russia already knows how to run these types of businesses. And they're opening up their own places like Taramuk and stuff like that. So it was like the perfect scenario to help build Russia up, to have the West come in for a couple of days and then kick them out when Russia knows enough how to do it. That's what it looks like to me. So
yeah, actually, all this situation reminds me one of the Russian proverbs: that "Гром не грянет, мужик не перекрестится." It means that if a man wouldn't hear the thunder, he would not cross himself. So the thing is that you start traditionally, or at least the stereotype about a Russian means that the Russian will not do anything unless he forced to do it by the circumstance. You see, so all those sanctions, if they didn't happen, probably needed to be done anyway somehow. They probably.
Well, I think for human beings in general, you don't do things unless you have to.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Because I don't have a couch, but if I had, I would just lay on it all day long and just read books.
Well, I do have a couch. I almost never sit on that thing.
Here you go.
Kevin, let me make a statement before we end, because we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure people know about you. Go ahead.
Before you make your statement, let me clarify another one here for Alfred G. You're going to go the way Gloria did if you don't stop it. Russian Duma members are required by law to drive Russian cars, and Russian cars are made in Russia. In fact, many foreign cars like Mercedes-Benz are made in Russia. Kias are made in Russia. So, don't be putting information out there as fact and making snide remarks, or you too will go sit in the corner with Gloria.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Kevin, because that's a good segue into the statement I wanted to make to end this video. If you'd like to see me getting in a car with a ghost Duma guy, you need to watch my video tomorrow, which is already, the premiere is up. So you can go click notify on that and share it with people and have a good time watching me and my wife at the Russophile conference. But I also wanted to say, if you're watching this through my channel, make sure you go find American in Crimea, Kevin, right here on the bottom, because this was all his invention, his idea to do this live stream. We're doing it on his platform. And he was kind enough to stick this on my channel. I didn't even know it, but I'm glad he did, because the live stream numbers are good. I even had to click over and click monetization while we were talking because I was like, oh, whoa, this is on my channel and I didn't know it. I better get the money flowing here. But yeah, definitely, guys, make sure you subscribe to American in Crimea. Kevin, if you don't know me, I'm the Expat American. Subscribe to me and send Serge a nice email, unless he has a YouTube channel I'm unaware of.
I do have, but it's only for watching. I don't put. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
have some videos there, but it's mostly like minor stuff. Yeah. By
Well,
the
this
way,
is a
have you been to Kaluga, Joseph?
Kaluga? Have I been to Kaluga, Kevin? That sounds familiar. I have been to Kaluga. I'm pretty sure.
Do you
You
have it
have.
on video? Because this is a city of my birth. I've never been
Yeah,
to. Actually.
dude. Go look at the playlist called South of Moscow. And I'm pretty sure I've been to Kaluga, and Kaluga is fantastic.
Yeah,
It is
I'm going to
completely
watch.
built up and beautiful.
Yeah, actually, I had plans to visit the country and the city of my birth on my 60th birthday, but unfortunately, with all the events, it didn't happen.
I'm sorry about that,
Well,
man.
you'll have to do it on your 63rd birthday.
Maybe, who knows? We'll see.
Well,
We're
Kevin,
gonna
I
have to
think
have a
you
big
should,
pizza party.
Kevin, I think you should click end so more people want to watch this. It doesn't get too long, but yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
This has been a great political conversation. I appreciate it. And if you want to see me interviewing Russian politicians tomorrow, definitely go click on that video that's coming up that I suggested. But thanks so much, Kevin. And Serge, it's nice to
Thank
meet
you.
you.
It was very nice meeting you too. Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Maybe,
All right,
hopefully
guys.
not the last time.
Thank you all for coming.
Bye. Thank you.
Sure, man.